I am the Notherian, and I'm here today with Bludex, who is one of the top 8 in the Forgewatch Invitational. He'll be playing this weekend along with 7 other great players for the grand prize, a chance to be immortalized forever on a future SolForge card. Thank you so much for joining me, Bludex.
Hey, no problem. Anytime. Good to be here.
I also have with me Kit, who's going to be in the booth this Saturday doing commentary for the Forgewatch Invitational, and he's helping me out with these interviews.
Hey guys.
To start out, you're playing a Tempest Necrium deck, Grimgaunt's really heavy removal. Why did you want to play this type of deck?
Well, basically, for one thing, I was already very familiar with this archetype. Since I joined when SolForge first came out in August, these were the two factions I kind of focused on and got real comfortable with them even before these new cards were released. However, I did want to go in playing the best deck I could, and all I did for a couple weeks really was I started with something like this, and I'd do tournament queues, and whatever I'd lose to repeatedly, I'd build that and start playing that, and I would take notes after every single game and see like what cards would have helped me, what cards blew me out, what cards could have saved me, and basically in the end, I just found that this archetype was just much more consistent overall, in my experience anyway.
So what are the key cards in this deck?
The premise is actually really basic. It's basically just removal and creatures that get really really big and get hard to deal with, namely the Grimgaunt Predator and Devourer. The game plan is basically clear their board as much as possible as quickly as you can. There's way too many synergies in all the archetypes these days, especially since Patriarch is in every single other deck in the top 8. And I knew it was going to be popular. I ran into it in tournament queues all the time. So my plan was basically clear the board, decrease the value of Roar and Patriarch. If there's going to be Phytobomb, use a card like Epidemic to clear that out. And I would, in turn, one thing that goes well with removal are the Grimgaunt cards, the Devourer and Predator. So as their board gets clear, those cards get bigger, those cards get harder for the opponent to deal with, and if they don't have any kind of instant removal like Botanimate, usually, that one card will just take it, for the win.
So I noticed at the top there you have Lyria in there. I noticed that a lot of the other NT decks were not running Lyria. I was just curious what your experience with the card was and what matchups you're looking to play it against.
Funny story there. Honestly, Lyria was kind of a dud for me the whole time, and really the only reason I did play her was it just so happened that I got blown out by her a few times in a row in tournament queues. So I'm like, well, she's killing me. She must be good. And either I don't know how to play her right, or she's just too slow for me in the beginning, too unpredictable. Honestly, I almost never played her in the whole tournament on Saturday. Saturday.
So what might you add in instead of Illyria if you were going to remake this deck in the future?
Believe it or not, actually Zrath, the heroic zombie regen guy, mainly because of the body he comes on. He's a 5/6, comes a 9/10 in phase 2, not removable by Dreadbolt, Lightning Spark, or Cull the Weak. And I ran into him and Tarsus. It gave me a lot of trouble. And I actually kind of remade this deck and did some tournament queues after the tournament, and I thought I was doing even better with the Zraths in there. If I had more Zimus, I would definitely play more Zimus, but he's actually been a pretty good card for me just because he's so hard to remove, and that region comes into play sometimes too.
My last question for you, as far as the deck list goes, is Epidemic. There's been a lot of chatter on the forums that this, used to be considered the quote-unquote best card in the game, and now a lot of people are saying it's almost useless compared to Patriarch. Are you finding the same? Like, how do you feel it is specifically against the Patriarch decks?
Honestly, I think it's still really good. You just have to know how to play it. I've definitely, after running into nothing but Patriarch decks, I think except for one match, there's no way I'd still go below 3. It was still way too valuable and too many points, because usually in the turn you're going to Epidemic, you're usually going to eat a couple things, get their toughness below 0, put a Predator in front of something. It's always still good. Phytobomb, while it wasn't really anywhere around this weekend, it was something I thought I was going to see a little bit at least, and it can be, it could turn the tide on those decks. Epidemic was huge for me in many cases.
All right. Well, on that note, would you like to jump into a game, Notharian?
Yeah, I will take us into a game. And now we're in game.
Hey, one of the questions I had for you is how you feel about your matchups going into the top 8 this weekend. Are there any you're excited to play against, or are they all about the same with you playing against the Patriarchs?
I mean, I kind of expect there's going to be a lot of Patriarch, which is why I try to, build this deck around Patriarch as much as I possibly could. Unfortunately, I am pretty scared about going into, seeing what the metagame is like. Uh,
Gotcha. Are you happy with where your deck is positioned for the top 8? Do you think it's do you feel confident in it, or would you have preferred to have played a different deck knowing what the top 8 was going to consist of?
I like playing this deck a lot. I'm very used to it. Like I said before, playing Necreum Tempe, very used to it. I did build the AU version with Thundersaur and robots, and I liked it, but it was a bit challenging to play. You had to be careful. The mirror matches were very frustrating. This deck, I feel, is much more straightforward to play, and still it's still good against it. This deck shines when they don't have a lot of those direct damage answers, and since they only have Botanimate usually to deal with some of these threats, the Grimgons can get more board presence.
Also, that Phoenix in lane 3 to start off with is pretty nice against a deck that would like to play, something plus Battle Tactician.
Yeah, exactly. Phoenix is really nice because it's a 7/6 body, which is good in every phase. And that's why I have him in there mainly. I think he's been, seeing the phase 3 version of him. While I did see him a couple times over the tournament, that's not the main reason I have him in here. The main reason is he's a 7/6 mobility 1 that I'll have in every phase at least. Of course, the level 3 version of it is good, but one thing that's really based on here is to get consistent draws. So even when I don't draw my leveled cards in the later phases, hopefully I'll have some good things in my hand. There's already a couple level-based cards, kind of with Cull and Dreadbolt. So cards like Phoenix and Lightning Spark, which are still strong in the middle to late phases. I like having them in there for that.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do to test for this invitational? Are you one of the people running chain constructed events? Do you have a team you test with?
Tournament queues, just straight out tournament queues.
Were there any other decks that you tested or saw that you would have liked to have tested?
I wanted to test the Necreum Utera deck more, the deck that Dark Soul is going into the tournament with. It's really fun to play. Witherfrost Succubus with Patriarch. It's kind of neat, really enjoyable actually. I just didn't get enough time to play it before going into the Invitational, and I was just going to go with what was consistent for me, what I knew how to play. Didn't want to change it up too much before going in.
Certainly makes sense. So I haven't actually spent a lot of time in the constructed queues. Let's do this, I guess. Yeah, so I actually haven't spent a whole lot of time in the constructed queues. How similar is the environment in the constructed queues to the type of decks you faced in the Invitational?
Very similar, actually. I almost everything that I saw in the Invitational, I saw in the constructed queues as well. I did a lot of them, especially in the 2 weeks leading up to the Invitational, the pool play.
And you bump into some people who are also testing for the Invitational?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I ran into Randall's, who is a number one seed. I ran into him repeatedly, and most of the time I actually lost versus him. But he was playing the AU robots every time, and I knew I had to have a good plan against that. And this was fairly consistent against it. I'm not saying I won 70% of the time, but it was much more like 50 to 60% of the time.
There's the Predator.
What would you say the MVP for you in this matchup is?
Call
Is
the
there a
week.
Call the week?
Yeah, mainly Call of the Week, because with Thunderstar, Battle Tactician, Patriarch, again, like, if you don't keep the threats off the board early, then they're going to blow out of control, and there's nothing you can really do about it. So Call of the Week is a good one. It's really good against Battle Tactician, Thunderstar. Obviously it pumps up Predator as well.
Uh, so Static Shock. I obviously saw a ton of Static Shock back when. Let's see. I definitely saw a ton of Static Shock back when everybody was playing. I think I can do this. Back when everyone was playing Flame Shaper. So now that Flame Shaper is a lot less popular than it used to be, Static Shock still a valuable card in this kind of removal deck?
You know what happened actually? So right after the patch, you saw nothing but Tarsus and Leafkin and Phytobomb and Etherhounds and stuff like that. And Tarsus, I couldn't deal with it. I had a really really hard time dealing with it. And I almost gave up the whole NTR types purely because of that card, because of that 5/6. And when I was searching for answers, the best one I could think of was Static Shock, because a Static Shock plus a Spark or a Dreadbolt will take out a Tarsus and stop them immediately. And honestly, that's the only reason I have him in there. They're also really good against Phoenix. I'm sorry, against Echo Wisp.
Yeah.
They are good against the Phoenix Egg. When Epidemic is not available, I would definitely not take any of them out.
Not to bash anybody that you played with in the pool play, but what was your easiest matchup, and what do you think made it so easy?
Well, it's terrible to say, because I mean Hans is an amazing player, probably one of the best in the game. But he was actually the easiest game I had. He was the only 2-0 that I had. Everything else was 2-1, and I think that was purely because he didn't play Botanimate. He played AU robots, and of course he played it very very well. But if you don't have Botanimate, and with me running powering through the Grimgaunt Predators and Devours, it wasn't that difficult to blow past there.
Which brings me to an interesting question. Do you think that, I know originally we had planned on hiding the deck list for the entirety of the pool play. Do you think if we had done that, that match might have gone differently for you without realizing that he was not playing Botanimates?
No, not really, because whether they have Botanimate or not, I mean, it's usually a pretty good plan. I mean, the Grimgaunts are the cream of the crop of the deck, and usually you're gonna have more Grimgaunt cards than they're gonna have Botanimates, and your Grimgaunts are always gonna be good, and their Botanimates, they may not draw them, they may not always be good, they may not be leveled enough, etc. So I don't think it would have changed much, and honestly, I didn't really look a whole ton, at the deck lists when they did get released during the tournament, because they're all very similar, and I had so much experience playing against AU robots in the tournament queues, so.
Yeah, I didn't level a Botanimate here, and that Predator is getting out of control pretty fast.
Yeah, I'm trying to draw one of my 3 culls here for that Thunderstar.
Yeah, I'd love to get him out of cull range, but that hasn't quite happened yet.
So I'm actually, I'll take this opportunity to say a few things. I'm actually really happy with where the meta ended up for the Invitational. A lot of people didn't have time to test. You're the third person I've heard say, they picked a deck that they knew over one that they could have potentially played otherwise, simply because they didn't have time to test. A lot of people on the forums lately have said that this is starting to shape up like a Cobblade format. For those who aren't familiar from Magic days, that was a format that was pretty much just one deck and only ever one deck, much akin to how Shapers was perceived last meta. And I'm actually pretty shocked, because Cobblade was a deck where you would go to a tournament, you'd see people play 75 card decks that were within 4 cards of each other, and now you're seeing like only half of the top 8 is similar to that, and even most of those decks, the same archetypes, are still at least 4 cards different from each other. And then you have completely other ranges of Patriarch decks, and then you playing a deck that isn't a Patriarch. How do you feel? Do you think Patriarch is the end-all be-all right now, or you think that people are just overreacting a little bit?
Well, like you said, yeah, they're all playing Patriarch, but there is a diversity in the off faction that they have. All three other factions are using conjunction with Utera there. So it's not like it's not like we're going in with 8 Utera alloy decks. That would be like the Callblade format you were talking about. But the point is, there's 5 different faction combinations in this top 8, and every faction is going to use the strongest cards available to them. You're not going to find a Necreum deck that's not going to usually have like Epidemics and Grimgaunt and stuff like that. Same with Utera and Patriarch. Same with Alloy and Tactician and Gargoyle. They all have their staples. This game, it doesn't have a huge selection of cards. It's only a little over 200 cards available to you, most of which are common. So it's not really a surprise. I don't really think that. I think all the hype and all the talk saying that the meta game is too single minded. I don't agree with that at all. But I do believe that Patriarch is the best card in the format right now, and only because of its Phase 2 version. In Phase 1, I think he's okay. Phase 2, I think he's a little too good. He's out of coal range, +4/+4 to all your Phase 1 cards, plus you get to play another card, in that phase. That's where I think he turns the tables too much, and I do think he's a bit much to deal with.
Well, thanks a lot for taking the time to sit down with us. We really appreciate it, and I hope everybody who's watching will check out the top 8 this weekend. Check out forgewatch.com for the links and all the information you need, and you will see Bludex and incredibly high caliber field competing for a grand prize this weekend. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.